Hello everyone and welcome back to a new lesson. Today we're going to talk about lighting in Unreal Engine, specifically interior lighting. To get started, there are multiple ways we can create the lights. We can either go to Create menu, go to Lights and Visual Effects and add the stuff, or you can go to Window, and if you open this, you're gonna see there are multiple light sources. We have a SkyLight, we have atmospheric light, we have a sky atmosphere, we have volumetric cloud, and height fog. Now, if you also go to the menu here again and we look at the lights, we have a directional light, and this one here is the same as atmospheric light, and they are both acts as the sun. There is the skylight, and this one is here. There is the sky atmosphere, and this one can be found under visual effects, sky atmosphere. There is also the volumetric cloud, the exponential height fog, which is the height fog. These are the basics on how we can create the basic setup for the light. So instead of going between this menu and this menu, you can create your basic setup if you are using Lumen or baked lighting with what you see here. So let's switch now to Lit, and let's go to create skylight, create atmospheric light, create a sky atmosphere, a volumetric cloud, and a height fog. And now our basic setup is complete. You can also use the environment light mixer to change options of your lighting, like the intensity, the light color, and some other options that I'm gonna talk about in a moment. And if you scroll down or make this bigger, perhaps put it on another monitor or as a big window or panel here, if you will. And if you don't use it, you can you can dock it to the sidebar like this. And when you want to use it, you can use it like so. For me, I am used to selecting my lights and using the details panel for most scenarios. And by the way, welcome back to a new lesson. I should have made it like subscribe or something, but if you're enjoying the lesson, don't forget to subscribe or share it with a friend so you can tell YouTube that, yo, I like this tutorial, I like this lesson. Something I like to do before we proceed is selecting our lights and creating a new folder, naming that folder lights. So I already have that. You can click, shift, click and drag, place them here. If you don't want to do that, you can create your folder from the beginning and then you can right click that folder and make it your current folder. So now if I delete these light sources and I go back again to the window, environment light mixer that I have here, I can click, and they are all placed here. Now I can make clear current folder and things are good. With this setup, if you press Ctrl L, you can change the direction of the sun, and you can see I'm now moving my mouse left or right, left, right, yeah, up and down. So let me bring it here. So up, down, left, right. I don't prefer to move my mouse like left and right at the same time because that's kind of confusing. So this is the way. If you click on the directional light, we have some settings and we can start with the transform. Sometimes from here you can precisely rotate your directional light, but it's kind of hard. I really prefer to do it from the Ctrl L, but if you're using the sequencer, you're gonna use that. Let me grab some coffee. Next, we have the light color, and these two and a few other options are across all the other light sources that we're gonna discuss in a moment. So if you change the light color, simply it will have an interesting feel, the scene. So that's interesting. And if you click on this here, you can reset the property. You also have the source angle. So let's go outside, look at the sun. Don't do it in real life, please. And make this bigger, make it 50. And as you can see, the source of the light is bigger now, which is in this case, the sun in this Unreal world. And all the shadows are extremely soft. If we set this back to the default value and make it like, slightly bigger. And as you can see, the shadows are getting softer, and that's very cool. If this here is annoying for you, that's because it's the lens flare. And to disable this or control the lighting better, or imagine like a post-process, well, it's the post-process volume, let's add that. So go to the create menu, you can go to visual effects and add the first option you see, it's the post-process volume, or you can click on the create menu and type post-process volume, and it will search it for you. And guys, I want to say this once and for all. This is called quickly add to the project, but I like to call it create menu. It just sounds more natural for me. If someone wants to sign a petition or something for Epic, it would be cool. Create menu. I don't know, a pool, maybe a pool. What name should this be? Leave a name in the comments about what should we call this, because quickly add to the project is too much. So I like create menu. What do you think? So a post-process volume will control many things about what we see in the scene. It will control the exposure, it will control the lens flare, the bloom, everything you can see here. And it's divided into multiple categories. And for me, I always prefer to collapse things as I go. So let's do that. So we have a category called lens, we have color grading, film. So these will change filmic effects, and none of them is working now for one reason. You either need to make this bigger. So if you get inside this volume, and now we can switch or change what's happening, and this will color grade our shot. I can click on these. So in our case, if you want to disable the lens flare, we can go to lens flare, intensity, set it to 0 or 0.1. It's nice at this stage. If you want to make this affect the whole project, what you can do is either making this bigger, and this is common for architectural projects with the interior and exterior spaces, or you can make it affect the whole world. And if you scroll all the way down, you can find post-process volume settings, infinite extent, and bound. Let's set this from false to true, and now we can see the effect of the lens flare is gone. Little tip, you can right-click any setting you use a lot and add that setting to your favorites. And if it's already in your favorites, you will have the option to remove this from your favorites. And the favorites in the details panel for all actors can be toggled from here, okay? And you can see the options that you would favorite. So I have priority, infinite extent, and the exposure controls that we can talk about in another lesson. Today we're gonna keep it focused on lighting only. So let's put this also here under lights, and let's keep going. So let's go to the directional light. We have temperature, make it warm or cold in the winter, make it affects the world or not. Sometimes you may want to disable your lights, so there is an option for that. And sometimes you just don't want for a specific light to cast a shadow. You also have the option for that. In addition to this, we have the indirect lighting intensity. And this is what Lumen is really good at. Indirect lighting, global illumination in real time. And we can control the intensity of that. So if for any reason, let's say you have a project or you have an area that's too dark, and right now the blue comes from the volumetrics. So let's find the exponential height fog and let's set this 10 times smaller. So it's 0.00 and it's kind of better. And let's also enable the volumetric fog. Okay, now let's go back to a dark area and let's make the light slightly darker like this. Let's say this is too dark, and let's say perhaps you're not using auto exposure. So this is actually something important I need to cover, but we can talk about the why in future lessons. But what you need to know about is that you can control the auto exposure. You know, in real life, when you go outside, look at the sun, please just do it in Unreal, not in real life, and go inside. Your eyes will hurt, at least in real life, and then slowly things will be back to normal. Now, don't look at the sun, yeah? Go to exposure, then go to metering mode and the exposure compensation. Right now, the metering mode is set to auto exposure. You can set this to manual, and if this is set to a low value like 1, it will be dark, but maybe that's what you want. But you can increase this to a value like 9 as a starting point. Maybe this works for you, maybe no, I want a value of 13, maybe this works, let's say yeah, or let's say 10, right? Now, let's say this is not enough, but this value works for me because I have different light sources that I set up their units to match an exposure value I want for the scene I want. Depends if you're going photorealistic or if you're just using units. You can art direct that by going to the light source, and you can increase the intensity of the indirect lighting to 3, 5. As much as you want actually. So let's use it like to 3, but yeah, don't go full too much with this. If I do this, so I'm gonna press Ctrl L and press on my directional light again, When you have a project with many assets and things happening, you can simply type here directional or something. It will always be like easy to select. Or you can lock the selection into this, and now whatever you select, it doesn't matter because we have our directional light. So if I set this back to 1, if I set it now to 6, and you get the idea. We also have volumetric scattering intensity. This will make a difference when you use volumetrics, so it's a topic for another lesson. And then we have advanced that we will keep for another lesson. This is enough for the directional light. So next to that, we have the SkyLight. So if I disable this again and click on my SkyLight again, we have real-time capture. So if I change my light source, real-time happening all the time. By the way, I think for my post-process volume, I'd like to go with an exposure value of like 13.5. And yeah, so let's go back to my SkyLight and real-time capture. If I disable this and I change the light, there is some SkyLight left, as you can see, because it's not updating in real time. So we can update this now again, and as you can see, it updated the light. So if this is dark, now let's just bring the light and disable the real-time capture. Something is off, right? So if I click this now, this should be better. After remove, you have now this area that does not get any directional light is now lit with the SkyLight that is being captured in real time. Okay. Next to that, we have also the ability to change the texture of the SkyLight. Right now, there is no texture. It's being created in real time, which is the sun and the cloud and stuff. And let's delete the clouds. We don't want them for now, so we can get better lighting. You can disable real-time capture and change the source type from the scene, from the project, to a specific cube map, to a texture. And if you go to a website like HDRI Haven, you can find textures and add them to your project, or you can find textures that are within the engine. So if you go to engine, and here you need to enable search for HDRIs, so show engine content, plugin content. If you type HDRI, you're gonna find these in the engine content that you can also use on your SkyLight. So I'm gonna click on here, and right now this is using the SkyLight texture, this one, it's a 4K texture, as a cube map, as a light source to light my project. So if I disable the directional light and anything that's related to lighting, except for my SkyLight, it will use this texture to light my project. And just like any other light source, you have the intensity. So this is now set to 1. You can set this to 8, or you can set it to 4. You have resolution, you have the angle, so you can switch the angle. And sky distance threshold, this is kind of related to reflections. It's not gonna work here. It needs special scenarios, but keep this at default. You almost never have to change this. And it works when you're using directional light. So we also have a light color. You can tint the light, the same as the directional light. We have effects word, cast shadows, indirect lighting intensity, and so on. So I'm gonna click on reset on all these options here and enable real-time capture again, bring the sun and press on show all my actors so we can talk about the other light sources. So if you go to create menu, go to lights, we have the point light, and this is a point in space that will emit light in all directions. I'm gonna press G to see it. It's represented by the light bulb. It acts like a light bulb actually, and for simplicity reasons, it's considered as a point in space. So if we move this around, I'm gonna press here, then press shift to move my camera with my selection. And let's hide our sun, so we just see the effects of the point light, okay? Look at the shadows, the same as the sun earlier when we discussed the source radius. We have here intensity, intensity units, light source, attenuation radius, and source units. Source units and source radius. Source radius, if you increase this to a value like 5, you can see the shadows are much softer. And the attenuation radius, if we go all the way up, you can see this is a value of 1000 units. In this case, is 10 meters because each one unit in Unreal is 1 centimeter. So if you decrease this, it will decrease where this light is reaching and where the intensity is also focused, kind of. So if this surface is intense, then it will have a proper indirect lighting. If it's not lit well, you're gonna have a darker scene. So you can art direct things the way you want. So let's say we want really soft shadows and not a big source, no source radius. You can make use of indirect lighting. On the point light, we have other options as well. So let's make this, reset the value, decrease this to value like 2. We have soft source radius, and this will affect the reflections. So we have one that affects the shadows size and their softness, right? But I don't believe anything changes, or no, it does. You can see here, it's reflecting the light because this is invisible mesh that is emitting light. That's how you can imagine it, okay? So the soft source radius will like how much specular we have on other reflections. So even if you decrease this a lot, you can have this when this is set to 0. And then if you increase this, you can have more specular. And it also goes on other light sources. Now, what's special for the point light, and each light have their own special settings, like you don't see the same settings on the directional light or the rectangular light, and so on. We have the source length, and this will make your light longer. So if I can show you a mirror, or let's bring this asset and just do this, perhaps we can rotate and decrease the soft radius like this. This is now set to 0, and now if we increase, so you can see our light is being extended, and the same for here. And if we increase the radius, you can tell as well. So if you want to place a light here, you can do that, or you can place other light source like emissive material with rectangular light, or a point light like this. They all work. So you can do this. Place it here, bring the sun. Now the problem with the point light, it emits lights everywhere, so it needs to be like enclosed environment. Maybe here might be not bad. So if you make it much smaller, and in my case, to move things around, there is a shortcut called paste here I use a lot, so I can Control X and click and paste. And if you right click anywhere or click anywhere, you can go to you can go to edit, paste here. This is my own custom shortcut, Shift V. It just makes it easy for me to place my lights. Now I can decrease the intensity so I can see what's happening, decrease the light source. And by spending some time, I can make this the way I want with the point light. Of course, you need to be careful not to go too much. Let's make it a little bit, move it bigger. And if you make another copy and rotate it, it's gonna look nice here as well. However, I'm going to leave that for you because I'm going to leave an empty version of this apartment for you in the description to add your own lighting, your own furniture, and show me your result. I'm excited. If you learned something and you want to follow along, I'm really excited to see what you create. So maybe we can compete on who make best lighting. Yeah. All right. So now the point light, just like the other lights, we have temperature, we have views, effect word or not, and so on. So I'm going to move that light just a little bit down like this, and I move the light instead and make it like much lower intensity. Moving forward, we have the spotlight, and just like a point light, it is a point in space but is more controlled lighting. So you have a cone, and with this cone you can see our lighting being directed here. I'm gonna remove the sun, so I'm gonna press Ctrl L to move, to just do this. Ctrl L. Goodbye. You have the intensity, you have the units, and you have the cone angle. You have the inner and the outer cone angles. So let's go somewhere. Let's go to the kitchen. So I'm gonna press Shift and move with my light. Press on E, rotate, press on W to enable the transform tool and move my light up. Now, if I change the outer cone, it will be more focused, and if I press G, you can see, yes, the light is more focused. And if you switch the inner cone or make it up, look at the fall off here and look at the number 0 as it is reaching the number 3. So you can see the fall off completely gone. So I'm gonna make this big like a flashlight. Then you can reduce it again like this. So this is the flashlight effect, for example. Just like the point light, if these shadows are too much, you can increase the source radius. And if you want to control the reflection in the metal objects, you can increase the soft source radius. So in the reflections objects, you can see it now. And we also have the source length as well, just like the point light. and temperature and the same settings as others. So if I want more intensity for my point light, I can do that from here, from the indirect light intensity, effect word, and so on. Next to the spotlight, we have the rectangular light, and this is a light source that is emitting from a rectangle. So this is the space it's emitting from, and then it has what we call a barn door, and you can find its settings from here. It has the barn door length and it has the barn door angle. And let me show you that in action by rotating the light, making it here. Let me delete this and let's move this back. So let's make the door big, right? You can see how it's controlling or how the light is being like exactly from here, right? Then you can change the angle and you can get creative with this as much as you want, totally up to you. You have the intensity, so there is no intensity or very much intensity, nuclear intensity. There is the source width, so you can change the width and the height of the rectangular light by changing the options here, click, drag, or set the exact value you want. And the same for these guys. And what's very interesting about the rectangular light is the ability to set a texture on our light. So if you select a texture, for example, it will emit or get as close as possible to that texture. If you select a texture that is like, let's say this color, so you get the idea. Very, very awesome stuff. You can design your textures, your colors, and then assign them and get creative with motion graphics or whatever you want to do. Now, I'm gonna reset this. Use temperature is the exact same, and it's just beautiful playing with lights in real time and seeing things happen in real time. Next to the rectangular light, we have the HDRI BackDrop and the sun and sky. And these two are plugins. So let me start with deleting our light sources again. I'm going to delete the SkyLight, Sky Atmosphere, Exponential Height Fog, and Directional Light. Let's delete all of them. And if you go to Edit, Plugins, here if you type Sun Position Calculator, and if you type HDRI BackDrop, then restart your engine, you will have additional 2 lights here. So HDRI BackDrop, I'm gonna click and drag, and this is a blueprint with options that are exposed for us that we can change, like the cube map, the intensity, the size, and other settings. And this is also a great way to light your projects, whether it's an architectural project, little like this one, or maybe you are lighting a product or a car, you can do that. Here you have the projection center. You can change on the Z-axis from 170 to 500, depending. If you're making this bigger, then make it bigger, and vice versa. So 900 perhaps. If you make like this 150, you're gonna make, it may not cover the whole project, so you need to make it like bigger, right? In order for it to work. And depending on how many HDRI images you have, and let's quickly import one from HDRI Haven, why not? So let's say this is a nice texture, pure sky. You can download 4K or 8K. I prefer to download 4K, that's enough for me. Save. So here I have my file. I can go back to Unreal Engine, press Ctrl space. So let's locate this file, save it next to it, drag. You can add this to the content browser, or you can go to the import, then select your light. Now, you can have the light selected like this and assign it like so. And as you can see, it changed the light of our scene. And now we can increase the intensity to see what this light will do to the scene. And it's nice. Now let's delete the HDRI BackDrop and let's add the sun position calculator. So go to lights, sun and sky, and this will add the sun, the directional light. So if you go to the details panel here, you can see if you have this like this, you can expand it. You can add actors actually, like to all your actors, just so you know. And here you're gonna find the same. You're gonna find like nice little blueprint, plugin, sky atmosphere, skylight, the directional light, and a compass mesh. Now, we cannot see anything because we have auto exposure disabled. So if we delete the post-process volume and let the engine do its thing with the auto exposure, things will go back to normal. And you might wonder like what happened exactly? I tell you, the sun and sky, this will use the physically accurate values and assign them on the assets you have. Like the directional light here is using 75,000 units, and that's like the sun value, or it can be more, but yeah. What's special about this, don't select here, click on the sun sky self. You can set the latitude, longitude, the time zone, and the month. So you can simulate the location and the position of the sun and to get the most accurate representation of its location in your project. So let's say I want in this apartment to switch it like to a place like London. So I can go to Google and type London latitude and longitude, press enter. So we need to copy these two values. This is the latitude and this is the longitude. Control C for this one, Control V. And for the longitude, we need to press Control C for this one and Control V. And for the time zone, let's set the value to 1. If for any reason you want to, any reason I'm saying here, like let's say you have cinematic shots where you have a mirror of the apartment in your architectural project and you want to create the other side, you can do a north offset. But that's unrealistic, but you can do that. Now, you have also the date, the month, the day. You can change these and it will give you beautiful results. So you can change now the time. So right now, let's say the time 7 a.m. or 1 p.m. and so on. I hope you found today's lesson useful. If you did, don't forget to leave a like to tell YouTube that, hey, I like this lesson and more people will see it. In the next lesson, we're going to talk about some interior lighting tips and tricks and also placing some artificial lights in our apartment. Again, if you want to follow along, check out the description. I hope you found today's lesson useful. This was Yahya from VR Division. I look forward to seeing you soon.